The Port of Houston Authority Terminal Operating System logged its first optical character recognition anomaly at 0417 Central Time on a Tuesday morning in late September, when an inbound container from the vessel MSC Kalina returned a confidence score of 12% on what should have been a standard ISO 6346 alphanumeric sequence. The container number, physically stenciled as MSC U4738291, was interpreted by the primary OCR array as M5CU4738291, triggering an automatic hold protocol that required manual gate operator override before the container could be released to the staging yard. Within 90 seconds, 3 additional containers from the same discharge operation returned similar degraded confidence intervals, all below the 85% threshold mandated by the terminal's automated gate system. The pattern was not immediately recognized as systemic because individual OCR failures occur routinely in port environments due to paint degradation, salt corrosion, or camera lens contamination. Gate operators issued manual overrides for the first 11 containers, entering corrected identification codes directly into the terminal operating system, while the OCR subsystem continued processing incoming units. By 0445, however, the error rate had climbed to 34% of all scanned containers, and the manual override queue had grown to 89 pending entries, exceeding the operational capacity of the 4-person gate staff assigned to the early shift. The system had not crashed or displayed any warning messages beyond the routine low-confidence alerts that operators saw dozens of times per shift under normal conditions. At 0520, the first drayage trucks began forming a queue outside Gate 7 of Barber's Cut Terminal as container release authorizations failed to generate automatically in the terminal operating system. Each truck carried a pre-arrival notification linked to a specific container booking number, but the OCR subsystem's inability to match physical container markings to database records meant that no automated gate transaction could be completed. Drivers were instructed to wait while gate staff attempted manual processing, but the volume of inbound containers requiring visual verification now exceeded 200 units per hour across all 4 active gates at Barber's Cut. By 06, the truck queue extended 1.2 kilometers along Spur 330, blocking access to adjacent warehouse facilities and causing the first calls to the Port Authority Operations Center from frustrated logistics coordinators. Terminal management initially attributed the delays to a temporary camera malfunction and deployed maintenance personnel to inspect the OCR camera housings at gates 5 through 8. Physical inspection revealed no obstructions, no visible damage to lens assemblies, and no abnormal readings from the camera diagnostic interfaces. The cameras were capturing images at the specified resolution and frame rate, and the lighting conditions met manufacturer specifications for optimal character recognition. The failure was occurring entirely within the software layer that interpreted the captured images, but this was not yet understood by field personnel. The recognition degradation was not uniform across all character types. Analysis of the error logs from the first 3 hours showed that the OCR algorithm was misidentifying the numeral 0 as the letter O in 73% of cases, the numeral 1 as the letter I in 64% of cases, and was returning null values for the numeral 8 in 41% of cases. These specific character confusions created cascading validation failures because ISO container codes follow a rigid format: 4 letters identifying the owner, 6 digits identifying the unit, and 1 check digit calculated from the preceding 10 characters. When the system misread even a single digit, the calculated check digit would not match the scanned check digit, causing the entire identification string to be rejected as invalid. Because the terminal operating system was designed to prevent misrouted containers, a critical safety and liability concern, it would not allow a container to proceed through automated handling if its identity could not be verified against the vessel manifest and the pre-arrival electronic data interchange. This meant that containers which were physically present, correctly positioned, and ready for pickup could not be released because the system could not confirm they were the containers the system expected them to be. By 7:30, the backlog at Barber's Cut had grown to 312 containers awaiting manual identification verification, and the queue of trucks waiting for pickup authorization had reached 87 vehicles. At 8:15, the Port Authority Operations Center received the first indication that the OCR anomaly was not isolated to Barber's Cut, when similar recognition failure rates were reported from Bayport Container Terminal and from the Union Pacific Setagast Rail Yard located 24 kilometers inland. All three facilities use the same OCR software platform, supplied by the same logistics technology vendor, and updated to the same version during a scheduled maintenance window 36 hours prior. The update, designated version 4.7.2, had been intended to improve recognition accuracy in low light conditions and to add support for containers with non-standard font styles sometimes used by smaller regional carriers. Internal testing by the vendor had shown a 3% improvement in overall recognition accuracy across a sample set of 50,000 container images. However, the test data set had not included sufficient examples of containers where the paint had faded to create low contrast between the background and the character strokes, a common condition in containers that had been in service for more than 5 years. The new algorithm, optimized for low-light performance, had increased its reliance on edge detection rather than contrast comparison, and this shift caused it to misinterpret certain character forms when stroke edges were poorly defined. The vendor's quality assurance process had not flagged this regression because the test parameters did not simulate the specific combination of lighting angle, paint weathering, and camera positioning found in actual gate environments. By 9 a.m., manual processing capacity had been exhausted at all three affected facilities. Gate operators at Barber's Cut were taking an average of 4.3 minutes to visually confirm each container number, cross-reference it against the vessel manifest, manually enter the corrected data into the terminal operating system, and authorize the gate transaction. At this processing rate, the 4-person gate team could handle approximately 56 containers per hour, while inbound container volume during normal morning operations averaged 220 containers per hour. The deficit was accumulating at 164 containers per hour, and there was no additional qualified personnel available to be reassigned to gate operations on short notice. At the Setagast Rail Yard, the situation was compounded by the physical layout of the facility, which had limited staging area for containers awaiting pickup. When the staging zones reached capacity, inbound rail cars could not be unloaded, and this in turn prevented new inbound trains from entering the yard. By 9:45, 3 inbound freight trains were holding at various points along the Union Pacific Main Line awaiting track clearance into Setagast, creating secondary delays for passenger rail services that shared portions of the same corridor. The rail terminal supervisor contacted Union Pacific Dispatch to request priority routing for the delayed trains, but dispatch protocol required that all containers be positively identified and logged before they could be considered cleared from the active rail right-of-way, and the OCR system could not provide that identification. The Port Authority convened an emergency operations call at 10:30 with representatives from the OCR software vendor, terminal operators, and the Customs and Border Protection liaison. The vendor's technical team confirmed that version 4.7.2 was deployed across all Houston area installations and agreed to initiate an immediate rollback to version 4.6.8, the previous stable release. However, the rollback process required a coordinated shutdown of all terminal operating system interfaces, a software package reinstallation at each gate station, and a database synchronization procedure to ensure that all container records logged during the degraded recognition period were flagged for manual review. The vendor estimated the rollback could be completed within 90 minutes per facility, but recommended that all automated gate operations be suspended during the process to prevent data corruption. Port Authority management faced a decision between continuing to operate at severely reduced capacity with the faulty OCR system in place, or accepting a complete operational shutdown for up to 2 hours per terminal in order to restore full functionality. At 11, the decision was made to proceed with the rollback, and all automated gates at Barber's Cut and Bayport were placed in maintenance mode. Drayage companies were notified that no container pickups would be processed until at least 13:30, and vessel discharge operations were paused to prevent further accumulation of containers in the staging areas. Approximately 1,840 containers were physically present in the terminals, but could not be released due to identification verification failures. The financial impact of the operational pause was distributed across multiple parties within the logistics chain. Drayage companies incurred driver detention costs as their trucks sat idle in queue rather than completing scheduled pickups and deliveries. Importers faced potential delays in receiving time-sensitive cargo, and in cases where containers held perishable goods or components for just-in-time manufacturing processes, the delays created risk of spoilage or production line interruptions. The Port Authority itself faced potential penalty payments under its terminal operator agreements, which specified minimum throughput guarantees and maximum truck turn time, the elapsed time from a truck entering the terminal to exiting with its assigned container. Normal truck turn time at Barber's Cut averaged 32 minutes. During the OCR failure period, observed turn times exceeded 180 minutes for trucks that were eventually processed, and many trucks were turned away entirely when manual processing capacity was exhausted. Ocean carriers faced potential vessel schedule delays if container discharge operations could not resume in time to complete offloading before the next tidal window for vessel movement. The cumulative cost of the disruption, calculated across detention fees, penalty clauses, expedited handling charges, and lost productivity, was later estimated by Port Authority financial analysts to have exceeded $4.7 million for the 8-hour period during which normal operations were significantly impaired, though this figure did not include secondary costs borne by importers and retailers further downstream in the supply chain. The software rollback process encountered complications when the database synchronization step revealed that 412 containers had been logged into the terminal operating system with manually corrected identification codes that did not match the codes originally captured by the OCR system. The database schema required that each container record include both the scanned code and the verified code, with a timestamp and operator ID for any manual correction. But during the high-volume error period, some gate operators had overwritten the original scanned codes rather than logging them as corrections. This created discrepancies between the terminal operating system's container inventory and the records maintained by the ocean carriers and customs authorities. Resolving these discrepancies required a manual reconciliation process in which each affected container had to be physically located in the yard, its actual identification number visually confirmed, and the database record corrected to reflect both the erroneous scan and the verified identity. This reconciliation process was assigned to a team of 6 yard clerks and was not completed until 1930, more than 15 hours after the first OCR anomaly was logged. During this period, the affected containers could not be released to drayage carriers because their legal status within the customs clearance system could not be verified. Customs and Border Protection regulations required that each container's identity be positively confirmed before it could be released from the port security zone, and discrepancies between terminal records and carrier manifests triggered automatic hold flags that could only be cleared through manual review by a customs officer. Normal operations resumed at Barber's Cut at 14:15 and at Bayport at 14:40 following completion of the software rollback and restart of the terminal operating systems. OCR recognition accuracy immediately returned to baseline levels, with confidence scores above 95% for more than 98% of scanned containers. The backlog of trucks waiting for container pickup was cleared by 17:30 through extended gate hours and the temporary suspension of certain non-essential documentation checks. Vessel discharge operations resumed at 1500, and the 3 delayed inbound trains at Setagast were cleared into the yard by 1620. However, the disruption had created a cascading series of secondary delays throughout the regional logistics network. Containers that were scheduled for pickup on Tuesday but were not released until late Tuesday evening missed their planned trucking movements and had to be rescheduled for Wednesday or Thursday, creating additional storage costs and displacing other containers that had been scheduled for those later time slots. Warehouse receiving operations that had been planned around specific container arrival times had to be reorganized, in some cases requiring overtime labor or the rental of additional temporary storage space. Several ocean carriers reported that they would be unable to meet their published vessel schedules for departing Houston due to the delays in completing discharge operations, and this in turn affected the planned arrival times at subsequent ports of call along their service routes. The Port Authority's post-incident review documented the OCR failure as a software regression introduced in version 4.7.2 due to inadequate testing of the updated edge detection algorithm under conditions of paint weathering and variable ambient lighting. The vendor issued a formal incident report acknowledging that their quality assurance process had not included sufficient real-world container image samples and committed to expanding their test dataset to include at least 200,000 images representing containers of varying age and paint condition. The Port Authority updated its vendor management protocols to require that all software updates affecting critical operational systems be deployed initially to a single terminal in a controlled testing period before being rolled out system-wide, and that all updates include a documented rollback procedure that could be executed within 60 minutes. The incident was classified as a Level 2 service disruption under the Port Authority's operational continuity framework, triggering a requirement for a formal root cause analysis and a review of dependencies on single-vendor technology platforms. Internal planning documents noted that the disruption had exceeded the port's assumed maximum recovery time objective of 4 hours for OCR system failures, and recommended that future contingency planning should account for scenarios in which automated identification systems could fail for extended periods without causing complete operational paralysis. No changes were made to the fundamental reliance on automated optical character recognition for container identification and gate processing, as manual processing at the scale of Houston's container throughput was not considered economically feasible.